me.
Whole sports all plays. Yeah. Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays. 365, we're making up plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. Whole sports all plays. Yeah.
All right, what is up, everyone? It is Wednesday, and at least here in the Midwest, it is hot as all hell. It was almost 90 degrees today. It was roasting, and my furry children are doing rapscallions at the moment. I almost thought we were going to have our third guest of Tig on, since Amon is out tonight, but Tig also said, screw that, I'm out of here. So it's just Joe and I tonight. And I don't think Joe and I have ever done a one-on-one podcast together. No, maybe did we?
In the very early days of
Very
the
early.
revamped Hoosier Huddle, it was you and I, sir, and then Almond was thrown into our laps like a good 18-year-old should be. Just not that guy. And
I need you to reword that, sir. Be throwing young 18-year-olds into our lap.
It's been a while. But I'm glad to be here. Almond is getting ready for his big debut tomorrow. He's doing a live amateur league cricket draft. So we're very excited for him. And right now he's cheating on us with a bunch of other people. So we're going to pretend that he's dead, or at least in a coma.
Right. Just temporarily. He'll hopefully be back next week. So, it's been relatively quiet in the NFL world so far. A little bit more in the NBA because of the playoffs. College football kind of heated up. You probably saw Ohio State has another 5-star QB prospect signed for 2024.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember right. So they've pretty much had a ton. The only one that has left is Quincy, was it Ewers, who went to Texas?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, he's transferred to Texas. He's going to be the starting quarterback there, which is really going to suck if Archie Manning commits there, because then Archie Manning is going to be the starting quarterback. Andre, what is up, man? Glad to have you in. Hope you enjoy the show.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of college, the Pac-12 has been out of the college football playoffs for the last 5 years. Like it's been really bad for the Pac-12, and obviously, as we've seen with patterns, there's always been at least 2 SEC teams. There's been at least one Big Ten team, and of course, last year we had an AAC team in Cincinnati, or there's usually an ACC team.
Or a Big 12 team,
or
Oklahoma.
or a Big 12 team. So it's Pac-12 hasn't really been relevant since 17 was the last time, I think, and it was
Oregon.
Yeah,
Oregon. Thank you.
So Joe, I'm gonna ask you if you had to give an early top 4 in college football of who you think's going to end up being in the playoffs. You can even say division winners for each conference. Who do you have as your top order? It doesn't have to be in any particular order. It can be any order that you want to put it in. Who do you think at least goes to the college football playoffs?
Wow, I mean that's tough because it's easy to go with the tried and true. The first 2 that come off the top of my head clearly are Alabama and Ohio State because of the returning quarterbacks, because of where they're at. I think C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young are going to go toe-to-toe for the Heisman. Of course, there's always somebody who can come up, but those are the 2 front runners right now. So I think Alabama, Ohio State, even if you hate those teams, you kind of have to look at them and say, yeah, these are going to be 2 of the 4.
Yeah.
I don't think Georgia's going to make it back. I think they lost too many people. The offense wasn't very good. I just don't know if you can replicate an all-time great college defense in back-to-back years. We've seen Alabama do it. Maybe Georgia can. I'm a little bit on the outside. They're going to get some carte blanche this year. They're going to be able to play with some house money, but I just don't see them. I'd like to pick a Pac-12 team. The sexy pick is USC just because of everything that happened. We assume they're going to be better. Maybe they're going to get it. I just can't. I really can't. if you're going to make me pick two more teams, if you're really going to make me pick two more teams,
I mean, you don't even have to be definitive on them. You can be like, or if you want to even throw out a couple dark horse teams, like you really think, hey, I think they have a good shot of maybe making it, or at least being competitive.
I hate to say it, and I just want this team to go in because I want them to get crushed again. I'm going to say Michigan. I think that they're gonna carry some momentum into this season. That maybe they're gonna think they have it figured out, and they at least have a chance to end up in the top 4. I mean, you could see 2 Big Ten teams get there. I think it's a possibility, and Michigan makes the most sense out of those teams. Another team.
Or if you just think 3 right now, you don't really have a definitive 4th.
I mean, it's so because we went into last season thinking that we had all the answers, and we really didn't. And even at the end of the season, we were kind of debating. This was the whole we needed 18 playoff because there's so many deserving teams. You know what? Again, not a college. I like Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame gets it in. And I think that what we're going to see is we're going to see exactly what we saw this past year. We're going into the college football playoffs. We knew that Alabama and Georgia were the 2 best teams, and we were waiting for them to face off. And I think this year we're going to look at Alabama and Ohio State and say, these are the 2 best teams. We just need them to win their games, and that's going to be the game that we're most concerned about. So those would be my 4 to just right now.
Okay. And then, Andre, we can do a quick – you want to do a quick take on who you have winning the Bucks and the Celtics series?
Me personally, I've seen a little bit more of this series than I normally get to watch of basketball, which has been interesting. I personally love, even though I'm an Indiana Pacers diehard fan, I love Giannis. I love his mentality. I love the way he plays. He has a definite old school throwback style of playing, a little bit of grit and grind, as the Memphis Grizzlies fans like to say. I just think it's going to be really hard to stop him over a 7-game series. I like what Boston does, but basically they had to become Superman in the 4th quarter of the last game and not miss a shot, and Al Horford had to play like he was on the 2013 Hawks to win that game. And I don't know if it's sustainable. Robert Williams is out again tonight, so we'll see what that happens. I know the game is going on right now. I don't know the score, but I just think it's going to be really hard to win 2 out of 3 against Giannis. He needs somebody to help. He needs the role players. He needs Drew Holiday. Again, a player I really, really like and was an all defensive caliber player. He needs to step up as well. And Boston, sorry, Pride. If Boston wins this series, they're going to be so insufferable because all they're going to talk about is how they beat KD and how they beat Giannis. Cool. But if you don't win it all, it's not going to matter. And Giannis last year proved how important it is to win it all because he went from the 2-time defending league MVP and people are like, well, maybe he's just not that guy. And then he goes up against the Suns, has the series of a lifetime, and all of a sudden he's that guy. So it's really important. But I just think the Bucks are going to pull this one out.
Yeah, so right now at halftime, it's 54-47 Celtics. So Celtics are up by 7 right now at halftime. Okay. I kind of agree. To me, the Celtics is one of those they manhandled Brooklyn, but I mean, you manhandled a Brooklyn team that is a mess. Like KD is KD, he's trying to figure it out. You have a very sensitive Kyrie Irving that can't really take he can dish it out, but he can't take it type of personality, and And I think the Bucks also have the experience that the Celtics don't have. Like the Celtics, you have some playoff experience, but the Bucks have more. Because they, like you said, they were able to go last year. They were able to finish. They took a little bit of a step back this year. I don't think they're as domineering and as dominant as they were last year. But again, I think just because of experience, and you have probably the best player in the Eastern Conference in Giannis, I think the Bucks will end up winning the series. But I will say this might be one of those series. It'd be, I think, one of the few that goes to 7 games. I think
absolutely.
It might be our first 7-game series out of the NBA playoffs. Because I think the Grizzlies are going to lose tonight, and then the Warriors are going to move on. Then you've got the Heat and Sixers tomorrow, and then the Suns and the Mavs. Miami and Phoenix just have to close it out, and then they're good to go. However, both of them are playing on the opposite team's home court. So the 76ers technically have home court advantage, and so do the Mavericks right now. So we'll see. But back to the college thing, though. I do kind of agree. And to be honest with you, it wasn't like I would say a lot of our determining factors for teams that we felt deserved to get in was because it was a lot of there was only a handful of undefeated teams left, but then there was a lot of teams that had one loss. And it was like, okay, you can't like for me as a college football fan, it was hard for me to be like, okay, well, are any of these 2-loss teams better than Cincinnati? Which we'll never really know because Cincinnati did the only real competition Cincinnati faced last year was Notre Dame. Now to me, I chucked the Notre Dame loss up to Jack Cohn because that man is trash. And for whatever reason, the Indianapolis Colts decided we need a quarterback. Let's draft Jack Cohn. You could not have picked a worse freaking quarterback. Like, why? Why do the teams that I love just draft stupid players? Like, I don't understand. Just why?
It's to hurt you. It really, in all honesty, Tony, it's to hurt you personally.
Like all three.
It says something about you.
All three of my NFL, I know it's like I'm a freaking masochist or something. I just love self-pain. It's like I'm a Cowboys fan. Oh yeah, you hate your life. Like you live in the 90s where you were, just barely a growing sperm cell. You're a Colts fan, which I couldn't be a Colts fan when they were good because all of them here were a bunch of jackasses. And it's like now I can be good because they don't have a quarterback. And it's like, oh yeah, you like the Bears? Cool. Also reminisce about the 80s and don't have a quarterback for years to freaking come. Like awesome. But
I'm glad I get to be here for this mental breakdown of sports fandom. It's nice to see it. It's nice to see it in person.
Right. But yeah, I kind of agree. It's like Alabama and Ohio State are really the only two definitive. Because again, CJ Stroud was a freshman last year. He really came into his own. I thought he did really, really well. Bryce Young obviously ended up winning the Heisman last year. He had a very good season. Now, Bryce will be a little bit more interesting because, again, Alabama didn't really have a lot of those like big wide receivers like they've had the last couple of years. They didn't have the Jerry Judys, the Henry Ruggs, the
even the John Mechie's, Devonta Smith, Jameson Williams. Yeah, a lot of these guys. Yep.
All these big-time Alabama wide receivers that came from there. So they don't have that. So it'll be interesting to see how Alabama, moves forward with it. Because, again, for 2 years in a row, Alabama, their top 4 receivers, their fourth-string guy, Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Henry Ruggs, and Jerry Jeudy, all 4 ended up becoming first-round picks going on and have become stars in their own right, with the exception of one, but, that's neither here nor there. We're just going to speed past that per se. That's right, I went there.
Yeah, you did.
So it'll be interesting to see how Alabama kind of bounces back from that, as well as they didn't have the defense that I expected Alabama to have. And like I said, they also really struggled against Auburn in the Iron Bowl with a backup quarterback that was hurt to no end, which is why I completely discredited Alabama doing any type of decency and giving them respect last year just because of that. But obviously Alabama, Ohio State, after that, I do have to kind of think that it's going to be another SEC team. And I only say that because if you look at college football for the most part, unfortunately the SEC runs most of it. SEC almost always has 2 teams in it, not because it's like mandatory. It's just they always end up having 2 teams. I think Georgia can because their depth. It will be interesting. They're going to lose a lot of stars. I don't think they're going to have the defensive might that they have. But even before a lot of these players broke out, Georgia was one of those. They almost always won their games, and they did fairly well. It was just they were one of those teams. They couldn't get over the hump. They couldn't finish. They couldn't get the chip. They finally did that last year. So I think they'll have a little bit of a hangover, but I think they'll be able to be good enough to at least get into the playoffs. Michigan, I definitely see what you're talking about as far as, they're going to try to carry themselves. They're going to have a lot of that momentum. And I know for Michigan, their college football win, like their playoff win, was against Ohio State, basically. Like that's literally what propelled them. But them too, they lost a lot of talent. The quarterback situation to me is where I'm like,
Always.
Because I don't think Caden McNamara is the guy. And I know Harbaugh also got that 5-star quarterback. recruit. So is he going to start? Is he going to keep Cade? Is he just going to keep this kid on the bench? Like, if
I mean,
Cade's
Harbaugh has shown he's not afraid to switch quarterbacks either. He's definitely went with the 2 quarterback system. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he absolutely started Cade out the gate and then switched to the younger guy and went back and forth. I mean, that's something that Harbaugh, good or bad, I think bad, that he's done throughout his tenure at Michigan, is not be afraid to kind of juggle the quarterbacks.
And to me, their running game as well, because Hassan Haskins got drafted by Tennessee. So Hassan Haskins is gone. So your main back is out. And it's going to be a little bit for the same for Michigan State. You know, Kenneth Walker got drafted by the Seahawks. So how do they kind of bounce back? A 4th team, because I'm going to pick Georgia as my 3rd. I think I am going to be kind of the person that just goes with USC, just because, again, with the coaching experience, he brings in a quarterback that knows the system. He's going to have a lot of 5-star talent players come to there. I think he's going to revitalize USC. USC is going to be on the map. And to be honest, to me, they kind of have the best opportunity, because really the only 2 teams you have to worry about in the Pac-12, if you're USC, is Oregon, and Oregon's hit and miss. Sometimes they're decent, sometimes they're not. And Utah.
Yeah,
that's about it. That's really your only 2 teams you have to worry about.
And we've seen that even when Utah has been good, they're usually not good for long periods of time. It's a very small window where they're good, and maybe that changes. Maybe that they're turning around. Maybe that changes. But I just don't like if you're selling me that Utah is going to continue their dominance in the Pac-12. Like maybe, maybe.
And then really for the rest of the Pac-12 teams, both Arizona teams, the Sun Devils are very average. They're very 500. The Wildcats, trash. UCLA hasn't been relevant since Troy Aikman. And even then Oklahoma, Oregon, Stanford. Yeah, Stanford's not the powerhouse it once was when you had, Harbaugh, Luck, Christian McCaffrey. Oregon State, non-existent. Washington State, non-existent. Washington, kind of. They're usually top 25, usually in the 20s to the 25 if they get the rankings. So I don't really see anybody out of the Pac-12. The Big 12 even, I think Oklahoma's going to take a step back. They lost a lot of talent, both in the draft and because of Lincoln Riley leaving.
Lincoln Riley, yeah.
Texas.
I'd say Texas is always the team that people think if they put it together. A
lot of ifs. And, I know the whole idea of, they got Steve Sarkisian. I remember Steve Sarkisian before he went to Alabama. He wasn't good. And him being there for 1 season at Bama, winning a chip, doesn't immediately make you a good head coach again. You're not revitalizing anything. And it's I know they did the same thing. It's Bill O'Brien came to Alabama and they did great. Okay, it's still Nick Saban's system. It's not like Bill is going to implement his own crap because it didn't work.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a bunch of maybes. There's a bunch of maybe teams, and I'm sure there's a team or 2 that we're forgetting that people would say, "Oh, don't sleep on Texas A&M. Don't sleep on this and that." I mean, again, is Cincinnati going to make another run at it? Probably not. We've seen these teams. The problem that we have is, I don't know if you're old enough to remember, and I can't believe I'm saying that without Almond here. Do you remember when Boise State played Oklahoma in the bowl game, and they ended up winning on the Statue of Liberty play? That is the beacon. That is the brass ring that all these second-tier colleges, when they say, well, no, we need to be in the top 4 because we can compete with the big boys. Because Oklahoma was a good team that year. Let's not pretend that they were some, they're only that. No, they were a good team. But every team that's last year, Cincinnati could beat Alabama. No, they can't. I have eyes. We can watch. But they think because it happened once with Boise State in the not-so-distant future that all of these teams, what was it? It was Central Florida before that, some of these teams. And it's guys, I want the kids to have the opportunity, but let's call a spade a spade. If they're not ready to compete. So even last year where you could say Cincinnati was deserving, we knew there was 2 or 3 teams behind them that we're going to have a more competitive game against Bama. And that's the dirty little secret of college football, is we know. And I don't think expansion helps that. I really don't.
I think it does for a couple reasons. It helps because obviously they're a big thing in college football. They want viewers, they want money, they want ratings. Who's going to be a bigger matchup? Alabama versus Cincinnati or Alabama, Ohio State? Like,
clearly,
bigger, right?
Clearly,
bigger brands, bigger names, better well-known names, bigger fan bases. It's like if you're a Cincinnati fan, you're probably going to be from Ohio. If you're an Alabama fan, you could be anywhere in the United States. You don't have to even be just from Alabama. And to me, if you expand the playoffs, it makes things a little bit more interesting. You can get kind of these better matchups because think about it. You look at, what was it, Ohio State? Did they play Utah in the Rose Bowl?
Yes.
Yeah, and that was a phenomenal game.
Mm-hmm.
And just think, if Ohio State could have continued to move forward, like, okay, they're done. We're going to keep moving forward. And say you have like an Ohio State versus like Georgia or something crazy like that. Like they take on, the next highest seed after Michigan got knocked out. Like, it'd make it interesting. I'm also a big proprietor. It's hard to get better and be nationally recognized when you're kind of condensed, because you look at most of the college football schedules, with the exception of if you're like Notre Dame, you can hand pick your schedules. You primarily just face the teams that are in your conference. Like SEC just beat the crap out of each other. The Big Ten beats the crap out of each other. You very rarely go outside of the conference, with the exception of when you go in the playoffs. And to me, iron sharpens iron. You get better as you kind of face these. You kind of get better. Like Cincinnati, Cincinnati got demolished, which we all figured they would.
Yeah.
But again, it'll also be interesting because a lot of these kids, they don't get to, obviously the teams don't get to pick their schedules. Like we said it all the time, you play who you have, you do what you can, and then you go from there. Now, like you said, am I ever going to pick like a Boise State to go against Bama? No. Like, we know it's not going to happen. And yes, it's kind of a cupcake way for people to march into the playoffs. But again, you could have a team like Ohio State that, hey, you're the 15 up. You're the 5th team up. Like, if you get in, cool. If not, well, try again next year. So
go ahead. Please finish.
It makes, to me, it would make things a little bit more interesting. But that's just me personally.
I get that, and I understand why people want to do it. Again, call me an old head, whatever. I just like I like the best of the best.
Mm-hmm.
And when you limit it to 4, I can argue about the rest, but they're supposed to be the best of the best. That's why I don't like the play-in in the NCAA tournament and stuff like that. I don't like that there's 7 teams in the playoffs now for the NFL. And it's like, come on, we've got some really bad teams that are getting in there. And yes, there are going to be years where the 5, 6, 7 seeds in a college football playoff might be as good as the 1, 2, 3, but we're also going to get some pretty bad teams at 7 and 8, teams that we know are going to lose. And it's like, well, okay, if it's not for money, because we need to set money aside. We know, well, it's not a secret anymore. We know that the NCAA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, all of it, it's about money. It's about ratings. It's about dollars in the pocket. Okay, we know that. What it should be about, as the viewer, we don't care about the money. We pay our cable bill. We get to watch. We want the best competition. We want the best games. We want the best teams. I don't want a watered down product. And if it's the top 4, I would rather spend the time arguing 5, 6, 7, 8 through 12 than watching really bad games because I have to. It's part of the playoffs. Like, it just, to me, it's not fun.
Yeah, I get that. And, it's even going to sound weird. Because I don't think you could really do a 6-game playoff unless you do like somebody for 3rd. Like if you have 6 teams come in, you have a 1 and 2 seed.
The 1 and 2 in your bye.
Yeah, 1 or 2 in your bye. 3 and 4, 5 and 6 battle it out. And then, those teams move on. Whoever is the last 2 could battle it out, and that's your number 3 team, I guess. I mean, you could maybe do that at like a side. I don't know.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying because, yeah, for sure. You don't want like a, if it's one of those like kind of like last year, it was like, oh, yeah, you have a bunch of, 10 and 2 teams. It's like, all right, well, all these teams, they lost some type of just BS game. All right, who do we really? So, I mean, I get it. I like it, and I think they're going to do it just because of the ratings, because of money. But again, I think it could be really interesting because, again, who, and you might be a little biased, who would you have rather gone into the playoffs as far as like who you think would be a better matchup? Would you rather have had Cincinnati or Ohio State or Utah or even who is it? Baylor won the Big 12 if I remember right.
Yeah. And a lot of people thought Baylor had an opportunity, and I think Baylor would have gotten smoked the same way as Cincinnati did. I mean, again, I don't like the NBA play-in stuff. I just don't like it. Why are we playing the regular season then? Like, why are we playing? If you get the 8 seed to get in the playoffs, why all of a sudden are you being punished? Like, I'm not saying everything old is the best. I think that for all the benefits of what it could be, you're going to have to eat some turd sandwiches.
Well, and you know what I kind of think it is? I think they almost want to mirror like March Madness. Because I mean, think about it.
That's
March
exactly
Madness,
what I want.
Regular season doesn't matter. Like, all right, you're the number one. Cool.
What North Carolina finished in the ACC?
Huh?
What did North Carolina finish in the ACC?
Yeah,
nobody cares. They went to the national title game. Like, who cares?
Yeah. So, yeah, and I mean, it does. It's the same way, but again, that is interesting though, because think about it. At the beginning of the season, with the exception of being a Tar Heels fan, how many people would have been like, "Yep, North Carolina is going to be in the championship." Like it did make it interesting. Yeah, I'll give it that. But we'll move on though. So speaking of the NBA and the NFL, the NBA wants to copy them, and they want to become a 32-team league. They want to put a team back in Seattle, which is funny because then.
They never show up.
Is it going to be one of those? Is it going to be like the Tennessee Titans and how they technically have all the Houston Oilers history, but they're in Tennessee now? Is like OKC going to have all of Seattle's history, and then they just have to start brand new, like fresh?
Kind of like Baltimore and Cleveland. Yeah,
Baltimore and Cleveland. Yeah. And and they want to obviously do Las Vegas too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get it. I do. But I also feel like, what's really the point? Like, it's kind of the same thing. Like, you have two. It's definitely money. I know that. But, like, the point of, because to me, the NBA season's too damn long. It's too damn long. Like, there's too many, because it's the same way. It's like, the regular season it matters, but it doesn't matter. Yes, it matters for seeding. It matters whether or not you get in. But it's like, oh, yeah, we can go on like a 15-game losing streak. No big deal. Because then we can go on like a 30-game winning streak, and we're right back in the playoffs. It's like, well, why? Why?
Okay. This is a twofold thing. Because number one, international viewership and expansion is the future of professional sports in the United States, whether it's into Canada, Mexico, or into Europe, and possibly even Asia, but that's a long time coming. So that is the thing. So if you say, well, we want to be like the NFL and go 32, what if the NFL decides that all of a sudden they want to put a Canadian team in there? What if they want to put, as your mayor in Dallas suggested, another team in Dallas, which would never happen thanks to Jerry Jones, a team somewhere else? Okay, NBA, you want to go to 32 because you think it matches up well with the NFL. It looks pretty. 32 is an even number and blah, 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 and blah, blah. Okay, well, if the NFL expands, are you then expanding, or was it for a different reason? And if I'm the players, and this would never happen because they can't get on the same page, this is the solution. Players and owners come together. We want to add 2 new franchises. We want to put one in Seattle. We want to put one in Vegas. And the players are like, okay, fine. But to get that, you're going to let us play 72 games and not prorate our salaries. So from now, we're going to go to 72 games. So you add more roster spots, which allows more players to be in the league. Mm-hmm. It also allows for more TV revenue because now you have 2 more cities, 2 more states. There's the owners' fees of buying into the league, which we know are probably going to go well over $1.5 to $2 billion a piece. So that's split between the owners, and the players help because now it gives them more mobility. But if I'm the players, before I sign off on this, I say, listen, you're going to cut us down to 72 games and you're not going to take our salaries back. Like, in the future, you figure out how much you want to do, but these are our salaries. Because right now it's based over 82 games. It's 72. It's still the same amount. If you were to get paid $43.8 million in 2024, you're still making that same money. I don't care that there's 10 less games. And also, I think that helps with viewership. It makes the games feel more important. It allows more rest. And again, I don't like expansion because the NHL did it the wrong way, where they expanded to too many cities and it watered down the product, and we're still fighting back trying to solve this. We do see that there are some good NBA teams, but we see some bad NBA product. And I think if they do this, it also has to go in correlation with players being allowed to come into the draft straight out of high school. I think they need to get done with the 1 year in college or 1 year from your graduating class overseas, because they are going to need players in here. You're going to see more EuroLeague guys come over younger, more guys like Luka, more guys like Jokic coming into the league earlier. I think you still have the G League, which is great as a developmental league. You know, a lot of second-round picks can go there if you draft somebody in the first, but you don't think they're ready. You can put them in the G League, stuff like that. But I think this has to be something, if they're going to do, it has to be the ownership side and the player side coming together to do this, which means it absolutely won't happen that way.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, you know, I'm not a big fan of expansion either, because you look at the NFL, like look at all of the expansion teams that have come about since the 1990s. So you had Carolina, Jacksonville, Houston, and Carolina, Jacksonville, Houston. Here's a fourth one, I thought. Is there a fourth one?
No, basically, I mean, you know, Houston moving to Tennessee, it's not really expansion, but you're going into Tennessee.
Yeah.
But no, expansion would be, again, like Cleveland moved, didn't have a city,
Right.
and then got a city. So, like, it again, it's not expansion.
But
yeah, expansion would be Houston. Yeah,
Houston, Carolina,
Jacksonville. Houston, Jacksonville, Carolina, and
I think that's it. So because Jacksonville and Houston were not Jacksonville and Carolina were in 95. Houston was in 2002. So, but nonetheless, you look at all of those. Which franchise has had the most success that's expanded out of those three? Carolina, and only Carolina, because they managed to get to 2 Super Bowls, and that's it.
Yeah,
like none of them have won a Super Bowl. Jacksonville has gotten to a AFC championship, one.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, they've had a terrible losing record all time in their franchise.
Mm-hmm.
The Texans, they had a span of about
5 years.
6 years there where they were decent with Matt Schaub at the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Came back a little bit when Deshaun was the quarterback. Didn't win a playoff game. I think they won one. And then, you know, other than that, Carolina is the only one, and they've been to 2 Super Bowls. One against the Patriots, one against the Broncos. They lost both, but at least they were able to get 2 Super Bowls.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you know, if I'm the NBA, you have the Sacramento Kings, who are garbage, historically have been very bad. You know, you're going to potentially put a team in Seattle who you moved because it wasn't generating revenue, wasn't generating money.
That's a whole. I implore anybody. There's like a podcast and a book about that. It is horrible what they did to the city of Seattle. They were promised they weren't going to move the team. They were absolutely lied to. And I know the people of Seattle have been pining for a team, but Seattle got screwed over. The hardcore.
And to be honest with you, I think it's one of those where some of these are tied with the NFL, because you think about it. Prior to the Seahawks, you know, kind of being revitalized a little bit, Seattle wasn't really big on the map. It was like, yeah, Seattle has a football team, but they don't really do much of anything. Like, they're there, but they don't have the attractiveness that like Matt Hasselbeck or really Russell Wilson brought to the Seahawks when they were, you know, competitive, going to Super Bowls, winning Super Bowls, etc. So it's like, how much do you think that's going to correlate over for that? Look at New Orleans, for example. New Orleans is a perfect example. Saints were terrible for years. They didn't have a basketball team. It's like, okay, now the Saints are competitive. Now we're going to put the Pelicans there. One of the worst run franchises. They lost Chris Paul. They lost Anthony Davis. They're potentially going to lose Zion. Like, you know, and you know from that podcast even better, I think Seattle would be very accepting of the team. But again, how long is that team going to last? Like, if you don't put at least decent players, you know, if it's not well run, then it's going to go to crap, and then you guys are just going to move them again. Or you guys, you know, and I don't know if we've ever heard of a league, you know, de-expanding, you know, contracting in teams and be like, okay, well, we'll get rid of Seattle again. And again, kind of the same with Vegas. It's like Vegas just got the Raiders. It's like, yeah, Vegas Vegas isn't really known for being a big sports town. Like really none of Nevada is. Like it's you go to Vegas for the casinos, for the party. Like the Raiders went there because Oakland didn't want to have to pay them. Oakland is in danger of losing its own freaking baseball team. And they've lost the Raiders before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not just once, twice. No, you're right. But, the NHL has done something interesting because they've jumped into Seattle and Vegas before the NBA really got into it. They have the Las Vegas Golden Knights who go to the Stanley Cup Finals. They have a Seattle Kraken who, I'll tell you what, for the 21st century, uniforms are flashy. I love their arena. They are really putting it together and getting a great fan experience for the people up in Seattle. So now the basketball teams have to compete. I actually think the smartest thing that should have been done is Steve Ballmer saying a goodbye to LA and taking the Clippers to Seattle. Invest that $2 billion into a state-of-the-art stadium. Now you're away from the Lakers. Now you can be the Seattle Clippers. You can be whatever you want to do and move it. Because I actually think that's better than trying to compete with LA. Because LA is just, I've never been out west, but it feels like everything is on top of each other. Like it's a Dodgers town, it's a Lakers town, it's a this town, it's a that town, it's a Rams town, it's a whatever. And it's always these secondary teams. It's the Clippers, now it's the Chargers, now it's all the Angels and stuff like this. And it's like, not that those teams shouldn't be happy living, being in the Anaheim, LA area, stuff like that. But if I'm Ballmer and I buy the Clippers and I say, listen, it doesn't matter. Steve Ballmer, as great as he is, he's not going to be able to compete with the Lakers. Move the team to Seattle because guess what? Now you're the hero. You are the conquering army coming into Seattle to invest in the city, to invest in the team. Because guess what Steve Ballmer's doing? Investing in the team.
Mm-hmm.
He is. I mean, we can make fun of the Clippers. The Paul George trade, the Kawhi Leonard those were big deals in NBA circles. And you do that in Seattle? Like, let's not forget, Seattle has a title in their history. Seattle's had some good players. Kevin Durant played in Seattle. Ray Allen played in Seattle. Gary Payton, Sean Kemp going to the finals in Seattle. This isn't an also-run franchise that people forgot existed, 90 years ago in baseball when there was like 4 teams in New York. This is a franchise with a good history. So even if you don't become the Seattle Supersonics, you honor that history. You take the names and put them in the rafters. You acknowledge that, hey, we are the second Seattle franchise, but we are number ones in nostalgia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do because and we'll kind of tie this in a little bit with the whole Dallas wanting to expand to 2 teams. Some of these cities don't need 2 teams. Like you think about it, New York realistically only has 1. They have 3. They only have 3 that have the name with it. You have the Giants and the Jets and then the Bills. Mm-hmm. And out of it, the Giants have won 4 Super Bowls. The Jets have won 1. The Bills went 4 in a row and lost all 4 to NFC East teams, ironically enough, which is insane. But it's like, okay, look at how long, though. Like, how long was Buffalo when they went from the 90s to bottom of the toilet? The Jets for essentially ever since they won the Super Bowl, in the toilet. The Giants have been on and off, with the exception of 2 miraculous runs by a Giants defense, a running game, and Eli Manning happy to make throws when he needs to make throws. The Giants have been at the bottom of the toilet.
I don't want to talk about it.
And like you said with LA, it's a Dodgers and a Lakers town. The Rams, look at the parade that LA had for the Rams. He didn't freaking care. He didn't care the Rams won the damn Super Bowl. They're like, okay. It's just like, okay, look at the Rams games when they go there. It's big. It's a flashy stadium. It's brand new. It's where all the celebrities can come to hang out. It's like nobody really goes there to see the Rams. Like they go there to see the other people that are going there to watch the game. Mm-hmm. And like you said with the Chargers share the stadium. The Chargers would have been, and I feel like the Chargers fan base in San Diego was so much bigger, so much more devoted, and I feel like he could have made more money in San Diego, or even move kind of around near the San Diego area. Why go to LA? Why split stuff with the Rams? You weren't a big fan base to start with. You were a decent franchise, and it's like, oh yeah, we'll share with the Rams. Why?
And part of the reason this has been kind of a pet peeve of mine for a while on the podcast that I have, is ownership needs to be held accountable. Dean Spanos,
Yes.
the Spanos family from San Diego, they didn't want to pony up money because publicly funded stadiums are a thing of the past. Don't tell that to the people of Buffalo who have to shell out $750 million, but they should be a thing of the past. Publicly funded stadiums. And the Spanos family didn't want to put up the almost $1 billion that it was going to take to either build a new stadium, which is what they should have done, or renovate the old stadium. So instead, they become the ugly stepsisters of LA sports, and they move in and they have to play second-class citizens to the Rams. And the Chargers fans of San Diego are like, well, screw you. We're not supporting you. We love the players. We hate the team. And that's the difference. And owners don't care. Like, I can make fun of Jerry Jones all I want. We could spend a whole night talking about Jerry Jones and how much of a doofus he is. But he invested in the stadium. He invested in the city. He invested in the team. Nobody's ever going to question Jerry Jones's loyalty to the Cowboys. Now, you can question his decision-making, but you can't question his loyalty. And I think there are people who own sports franchises that don't care that they own a sports franchise.
Well, and think about it too. Look at if you're a Dallas Cowboy, the instant celebrity fame you have just in the state of Texas, just in the city of Dallas. You know, like even Troy Aikman, Michael Irving have mentioned it. It's like you are royalty if you go there. You know, look at Dak Prescott will forever be Cowboys royalty in the city of Dallas, in the state of Texas, like forever, just because of that. And and like you said with the Clippers, why share a stadium with the Lakers? You know it's a Lakers town. They have 17 titles. You have 0. Like you're not like people went to Clippers games when the Lakers were out because they didn't have anything better to do, because that's LA. They have a very short attention span. You're not a team that has been there from the beginning, so no one cares.
And there's Lakers jerseys in the rafters when you go to Clippers games. I mean, like, come on, let's call it what it is.
Yeah. And so like you said, if they were to go to Seattle, like it's an established name. You could even rebrand yourself, make yourself something new. Like, oh yeah, we were the Los Angeles Clippers. Now we moved up to Seattle. You know, now we're the Seattle Supersonics, or now we're the, Seattle Tidal Waves, or whatever you want to call it. Like, yeah, I've never understood why some of these places want to have 2 teams when it's like, if you look at Chicago, if Chicago tried to get a second team, who's still going to be the primary team?
It's the Bears.
Yeah.
It's the Bears.
Look at Dallas. Even if Dallas was to try to ever get a second team, who's always going to be the team in Dallas? The Cowboys. Yeah. Like that's never going to change. It's not like Florida, where Florida has three teams in the same state. Dang it, Mike.
Jesus. Here we are having like a distinguished conversation about the pros and cons of, of ownership and stuff like that.
But no, it's like Florida at least has 3 geographically separated cities. You have Miami, Tampa, Jacksonville. It's like, California, we've seen you can do it with multiple teams. You had San Diego kind of near the bottom. Then you didn't have any.
LA,
San Francisco, you had Oakland. You had those. And it's like LA didn't have a team. It's like, okay, cool. You geographically have 3 separate teams. All 3 had solid fan bases to them. And then look at New York. New York kind of gets clouded because, the Jets and the jerseys. Dang it, Mike. Because, the Jets and the Giants are right next to each other. They've both gone to crap. Now, Buffalo, on the other hand, Buffalo's in its own little area. So it's like, I don't understand why some of these cities want major, 2 things. Like you said, I think some of these owners, they have the team, but they don't have the best interest of the city. They don't have the best interest of the players at heart. It's just purely to make money. And it's not even like, like when the Colts packed up out of Baltimore and came to Indianapolis, it was like, hey, they invested into the city. I will say Lucas Oil Stadium, because I was here for it. Lucas Oil was publicly funded. Now, I do remember Jerry Jones. He signed the Dallas Cowboy, the AT&T Stadium. He signed that out of his own pocket. He was like, Here's checkbook.
No, there was I have a friend who lives in Dallas. He's a diehard Cowboys fan, and we talked about this. And some of the money was publicly funded, but when Jerry wanted to make it bigger, he went to them and they said, "Listen, we're not giving any more money." And Jerry said, "Fine, I'll pay for it out of pocket. I'll pay for the big giant screen. I'll pay for this and that." So a lot of the amenities and stuff Jerry paid for out of pocket, but definitely not majorly publicly funded. It's just, again, it's really frustrating because there are a few people. The Rooneys are established. Even the Krafts, who have only owned the team since the early 90s, the Kraft family were fans of the Patriots. They were Patriots fans. They sat in the stadium and watched the Patriots play years and years ago. The Wyoming Wankers, Jesus. Actually, I have a great idea for a team in Montana, but nobody wants to listen to it. But again, like these owners, they should want to care. Again, I bring it back to Steve Ballmer. Here's a guy who wants his team to succeed. Is it financially beneficial if they succeed? Of course, but he wants them to succeed because he doesn't want to be an also-ran. But when you are a second team in a first-class city, you're always going to be an also-ran because there are people like the president of All Sports, All Plays Network, that even if the Clippers were to go 82-0 next year, sweep through the playoffs, and get their first title, they'd still say, "Oh, 17-1, 17-1, get the receipts. One ain't do you." I mean, there's always going to be people like that. Like people who've never won a Super Bowl make fun of the Bills for losing 4 in a row. How about you get to 4 before you start complaining? How about you get to 4 in a row, which, oh, by the way, nobody has ever done. The Cowboys never did it. The Steelers never did it. The Niners never did it. The Ravens, the Patriots, nobody's ever done it.
Oh. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Speaking of our interesting arguments that we have with a lot of people, and I want to throw it out there because we talked about it this morning. Who do you think is better? Do you think Matt Stafford, or do you think the other guy that is still in the NFC North? Not gonna say his name, huh?
Kirk Cousins?
Not Kirk Cousins. Not the guy in purple. Not Jared Goff either. It's the other guy.
Justin Fields.
No, not Justin Fields either. No, Justin Fields.
Oh, okay. You can say his name. We're talking about him, so you can say his name. It's okay. You're talking about Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I'll let you go first. Who do you think is better? Do you think Stafford or do you think Rodgers?
I mean, at this moment, it's Aaron Rodgers. And listen, here's the debate. This is what it comes down to. And the morning show tried to do this with 2 point guards, but it's not fair. Who is a better player versus who do you like more, or who is a better fit? And there's a dichotomy in that. The best player in the league is Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's a question about that. I'm going to give you some stats here real quick. Yes, passing yards. Matt Stafford was 3rd in the league. Aaron Rodgers was 10th. Okay, that's fine. Matt Stafford threw for 41 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. Good numbers. Aaron Rodgers, while missing a game, threw for 37 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. I mean, it's just to the point where I get it. I don't like Aaron Rodgers. If he were on fire, I wouldn't pee on him to put him out. And that's fine. But I can acknowledge being a great player. And Aaron Rodgers is a great player. Matt Stafford has put up stats on a bad team for a long time. He's a great guy by all accounts. He's a wonderful teammate. Guys love this dude. And that is perfectly fine. But right now, if you're just asking me the better player, it's Aaron Rodgers. Now, over the next 5 years, Aaron's older. Matt presumably should still have some years of his prime. Matt has an absolute chance to take over possibly the number 1 quarterback in the league, because we thought Mahomes was going to win the next 5 Super Bowls. I say that jokingly, but we saw that team, it's a lot. It's a lot of stress. Tom Brady's not going to be here forever, presumably. So can Matt Stafford step up and take the mantle? Sure. But at this point, you're not back-to-back MVPs in the league and be a bad player. Again, I know the stats when it comes to the playoffs. I know he chokes. I'm not asking who would I rather have. Who is the best player? That is a different question.
Yeah. I 100% being objective, I would say right now, over the last 10 years, I say they're about the same. Overall, I would give it to Aaron. And I say that because, like you said, Matt threw for a crap ton of yards, threw for a ton of touchdowns. He had a lot of picks, but, did all of this on the Detroit Lions. and obviously there's always the playoff stats. Matt went like 0-3 in the playoffs when he did get the Lions to the playoffs, which is an accomplishment.
Which is an accomplishment, absolutely.
And this is why, if I almost had to give it to somebody as who I think is the better overall quarterback, I would give it to Matt before I would Aaron. And I say that because Matt had to do more with less, and he had to be built. He had to not only be built around, but he had to utilize what he had and was still able to get them into the playoffs. He had a good defense that was heavily penalized. Young Ndamukong Suh, that, let's be honest, Ndamukong Suh was an ass when he, that rookie season. Even in like 2012, when it was him, Nick Fairley, Jim Schwartz was the head coach. You had Matt, Megatron. The best running back Matt ever had was Reggie Bush. Yeah. So it's like Matt came into and obviously, as we all know, a crap franchise that has been crap for ever since the Super Bowl started. The Detroit Lions have been irrelevant. Mm-hmm. Aaron inherited a really good team because you had a quarterback by the name of Brett Favre, who the Packers had built around 4 years, and then they continued to build around it when Aaron took over. Like, you look at that 2010 team that, Aaron took to the Super Bowl, how much of that was really Aaron? Because you had Greg Jennings, you had Donald Driver, did they have Jermichael Finley for that Super Bowl, if I remember right?
I believe so. I would say yes, just off the top of my head, because he fits in the line. Yeah.
You had Jordy Nelson, like you had Clay Matthews his rookie year, you had B.J. Raji, you had Charles Woodson, like you had, and surprisingly enough, they went 10-6 in the regular season. So it's like he did that, and ever since, Aaron Rodgers' teams have only gotten better, but he has nothing to show for it. Now, don't get me wrong, he has all the regular season accolades. I'm not going to dispute those or take those away from him. My biggest question is when have those ever mattered more than Super Bowl rings? Now, Matt obviously only has one, same as Aaron, only one. And the first time they take Matt out of Detroit, you put him with a team that is basically stacked, because this Ram team was stacked. It's probably going to continue to stay stacked for a while. He takes him to the Super Bowl and he wins it. So
let me ask you this, because a lot is being made of Aaron in his contract this offseason and all the money and stuff like that. But let's not forget, Matt Stafford wasn't taking hometown discounts to stay in Detroit. He was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL for a few years. He signed the biggest contract. So I get what is going on where people are like, you want to root for the guy. Oh, he had a crap franchise. He had this, he had that on, and that's fine. And if you look at their stats on paper, you could look and say, boy, that's pretty close. Fourth quarter comebacks, Matt Stafford had a lot of them, and that's fine. And all those are great. But I also go by the eye test. And I'm sorry, during the regular season for 16 games, now 17 games, more often than not, Aaron Rodgers rose to the occasion to lift his team than Matt Stafford did. If Matt Stafford wanted better players, take less money. Oh, yeah. Do the Tom Brady route. You don't always – again, I'm not trying to count people's pockets. I'm just saying there's more than one way to skin a cat. If Matt Stafford wanted to go to another team, he had plenty of opportunities in his career to do it. It only got to the point where they knew it was going to be a hard rebuild, and they were like, Matt, we got to get rid of you. Where do you want to go? And they worked out the deal, and it worked out great for him. And also, it's really hard. Let's not forget, you talked about the Rams going, I think you said 10-6, but I want to say you said Aaron was going 10-6 in that first season and stuff. Yeah. Let's not forget, like the Rams, I think were only 11-6 this year.
Are they 11-6 or
12-5? But it's not like they were 14-3. I mean, the Tom Brady Bucs, I think they were 10-6 the first year that he went down to Tampa Bay. Like when you switch or you come into that first year, you're not necessarily gangbusters. It takes a while to get used to it, and which is why you see. Again, Rodgers that year. You see Tom Brady his first year, Matt Stafford his first year. Even Ben Roethlisberger is an anomaly, going 15-1. With that Steelers team in his rookie year. I mean that doesn't happen very often. But I like Matt Stafford. There's a chance for him to elevate even more, I believe, if they have the right pieces around him. I just think, again, if you look at it, it's Aaron Rodgers. I get it. It's easy to hate the guy. He's got very punchable face, very unlikable personality. He's somebody that, like, when you watch a movie, you kind of hope that the bad guys, that he's one of the hostages and that they kill him, because you're like, oh, it's great. You know who he is? He's Ellis from Die Hard. Do you remember Ellis? That's who he is. It's the guy that you know from the second you see him that you're not going to like him. And you're just like, you know what? I kind of feel bad. But in the end, glad you're gone.
You know who actually, you know what you said that immediately made me think of it? He's Toby from The Office.
He's Toby from The Office.
Toby Flinders. Like in the Michael Scarn movie, when he gets blown up and you watch it like 100 times, that's Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, that was definitely the most expensive shot of the movie. I spare no expense. Listen, as an Office fanatic,
Yes, exactly.
I have a Threat Level Midnight shirt.
I have a Dundee at my desk at work.
So do I. I actually have one that says "World's Greatest Podcaster" on Spotify.
Oh,
so
okay.
it's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. Yes.
But no, I agree, and like you said, because I brought that up and somebody pointed out, Matt was the highest paid. Matt also had to overcome the fact of, and Aaron a little bit of Green Bay, because nobody wants to come to either city. Like, not a lot of free agents ever want to go there. I would maybe say Detroit a little bit more, maybe if they're looking at it purely from a weather perspective, because at least you're playing in a dome. Like, you're playing in a dome 2 times a year, 2 games a year, for half your games for sure. Yeah. But you look at the history of Detroit, though. Detroit has been a crap franchise. They weren't ever going to get a bunch of big free agents. I was surprised they even got Golden Tate when they got him kind of in his prime. They got Reggie Bush, but they got Reggie Bush at basically the end of his career. Yeah. And he was not the same Reggie Bush that he was.
He was still pretty good. He was pretty good that year. In Detroit, he was pretty good. Yeah. This is where, again, this comes back to ownership. If you're doing something all the time and it's not working, you have to change it up. You know what I would do, in all honesty, if I was Detroit, and I argued this from Minnesota as well. Play outside. You need an advantage. Like, a dome is not working. You're building a team for a dome and you can't win. So you know what you do? You play outside. Like, the days of Barry Sanders and the Pontiac Silverdome are over. Demolish a stadium, build a brand new one outside, make it the toughest place to play. We still talk about, you got to go up to Green Bay and play in the cold. Oh, you got to go up to Soldier Field and play in the cold. Oh, you got to do that. Like, I'm sorry. It's just.
Oh, no, I agree. And again, it's one of those, Again, this is why I kind of give a little bit more crap to Aaron, because even though Aaron they don't get the free agents that he does, and Green Bay is a better run organization, Aaron has done more and has been able to go farther with less. Like, Matt did a lot with less. Aaron has done more than that, and he can't get there. It's like, like you said, 13-3 pretty much for 3 seasons in a row, except for this season they went 13-4.
Yeah.
Whatever. You went 39-10 in 3 years. You sniffed the NFC Championship twice, and you lost. And it's like, and then Aaron is pretty much doing the same thing. And Matt is, oh, well, I want more money. I want more money. I want more money. For Matt, it's like, okay, well, nobody's going to come to Detroit. I might as well get my money that I can. The team's not going to put it into anywhere else, so I might as well get what I fucking can. But I mean, and that's my thing, is that, Aaron does it. He complains that, oh, well, I don't have enough help. Like we joked about, and like pretty much everybody jokes, or me especially, that the Packers didn't draft a wide receiver with one of their first round picks, or they didn't trade up in the draft to get him one. They're like, yeah, we'll take the kid out of North Dakota State. We'll take the kid out of a college that people only know because of probably Carson Wentz, and I think one other big name guy came out.
Josh Allen.
Yeah, no, he came out of Wyoming.
Or Wyoming, I'm sorry. Carson Wentz and Trey Lance.
Trey Lance.
Go to North Dakota State?
Yeah, and Trey Lance. So those are, and we don't even know what Trey Lance is. The 49ers don't know what Trey Lance is, because at first they're like, we're getting rid of Jimmy G. And then a few months in, they're like, we're not getting rid of Jimmy G yet.
Trey Lance is like the mistress that you have that you buy, that you like stuff in an apartment. You're like, I'm gonna leave my wife for, and then all of a sudden she lives there a few months, and you're like, you know what? Let's slow it down some. I think I'm gonna stay married. Let's see if this works out. She's a little crazy, leaves the house a little dirty, not as adventurous. We'll see.
to relate it to like a military perspective, Trey Lance is that like deployment 10. Like you're overseas, you're deployed, you're with a bunch of ugly dudes all day, and you see this girl and you're like, oh my God, is she hot? She's hot because you only have her to compare to a bunch of ugly dudes.
Yeah.
And then you get back to the States and she's like a 3. Like,
I feel like that's a shot at me. I feel like that's a shot.
That's a shot at me too.
It's a shot at me. No, that's a shot at me. Listen, but there's one important name that we're forgetting in all this conversation. It's Calvin Johnson. Like, the guy had a Hall of Fame. He's literally in the Hall of Fame now, and he played with Stafford his entire career. Like, again, I give a lot of credit to Matt Stafford, but let's not pretend like he was throwing to me, you, Freddie, and Pride. Like, the guy had Calvin Johnson. So, again, like, does he get bonus points because Detroit doesn't know how to get out of their own way? Sure. But does he get a free pass to the front of the line as the better player than Aaron Rodgers? No. I'm sorry. No.
I mean, I get it, and I know a lot of people bring that up, and I always hate saying this because it almost makes me sound like I'm trying to compare Devontae to Calvin. But when you look at Aaron Rodgers, like, who has basically been Aaron Rodgers' Calvin Johnson? It's been
Jordy Nelson.
Well, just realistically,
Jordy Nelson.
But Jordy Nelson would just burn you with pure speed. It wasn't like Jordy Nelson was like, give me the ball. Like that. Yeah. That's been more of Devontae.
I know.
So it's like, to me, they've mirrored each other. It's just Green Bay is better run. Green Bay has a better overall early history and kind of continued history. They had a once-in-a-generational quarterback in Brett Favre before they got Aaron Rodgers. Matt is pretty much – he is the best quarterback that Detroit has ever had. And, you know, I can't even say he's really playing the shadow of Barry Sanders. Very Sanders.
Very similar.
Very similar, yes, very similar. But yeah, I mean, I get it, and it's not even one of those. I would say probably right now, I think Matt has a better shot, and I think Matt would do better than Aaron. And some people may try to say, "Oh, well, Aaron doesn't have the weapons that Matt does." Aaron had a lot of those weapons for a long time. Before he got diabetes, he had a really good running back in Eddie Lacy. Tell me I'm wrong.
Eddie Lacy is what happens if Jerome Bettis doesn't stay in shape. Like, he's just like, all credit to Jerome Bettis, like, you know, having that body and having that career and going to the Hall of Fame. But like, it could have went bad, and going bad was Eddie Lacy.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know it'll always be a debate, but like I said, right now, again, if Aaron can win it next year, not only will he have 2, he'll earn a lot of my respect back if he can. Because if you can win without Devontae, that's what's really going to make me question, like, what's wrong with you? Is because you couldn't win with him, but you could win without him.
But let's also remember, and I posted this in the chat earlier, winning titles is hard.
Oh, it is.
It's really hard. Like, we always assume that, like, oh, well, the greatest players of all time have the most titles. That's not always the case. And you can look in the NFL, you can look in the NBA, you can look in the NHL, you can look in baseball.
You mean, like, Bill Russell isn't the GOAT?
I have that argument all the time. I say, listen, if you're going to tell me that you know, Michael Jordan at 6-0 is the best, it's like, well, Bill Russell would like a word. He's got almost twice as many. Oh, well, no, that's different. Exactly, because it's all in the narrative and it's all in the discussion and the fight that you want to have. And again, winning titles is really, really, really hard. I mean, there are some great teams that don't have titles, whether it be individual teams or groups of teams. You know, the Purple People Eater Minnesota Vikings of the 70s ran into Pittsburgh, ran into some of these great teams in Dallas, and couldn't get over the hump. We talked about Buffalo 4 years in a row. I mean, it's just not – it's not easy. And I try and give a little bit of benefit of the doubt because, again, it's 32 teams. Presumably everybody's trying for the same thing.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. I agree 100%. And it is. It's just – it's one of those when you hear this narrative and you even see it from the rest of the media about how Aaron's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You're not wrong.
Yes.
You're not wrong. I say I'm not gonna sit here and be like, well, that's a lie. Like, no, you're not wrong. But it's like you even have people start to be like, oh well, he's a GOAT. No, you're not. Like to me, you're not, because again, not saying you have to win, not even saying you have to go to like 6. Just go to more than 1. Go to more than 1. Like, people will always argue that for Drew Brees. Can Drew Brees be considered one of the greatest of all time? Statistically, yes. Same with Dan Marino. Statistically, yes. And because the era that Dan Marino played and the stuff that Dan Marino was able to do in his era, he was. Only went to 1 Super Bowl, lost, never win again, never won one. Drew Brees only ever went to 1 and won it. Aaron Rodgers only ever went to 1 and won it. So it's like, they can't be the Tom Bradys. They can't be the Peyton Mannings. They can't be the Eli Mannings and go to multiple Super Bowls and win them. I know, Eli. Hey, believe me, I don't even like saying it as a Cowboys fan. I hate saying it.
I don't want to talk about it. But again, it is. It's really, really hard to win. And again, if you're going to tell me that he is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, I'm going to say yes, because what he does efficient-wise and statistically is unassailable. There's no doubt about it. Would I want him for a whole season? Maybe the whole season, but like you joked earlier, I might switch him out for somebody in the postseason. No, it would not be Joe Flacco. No, it would not be Eli Manning or Carson Wentz or Nick Foles. But
that's your first mistake.
But I'm saying, like, you can't argue. And the whole GOAT talk is a whole other thing, because number one, I think it's really tough with current players to say that they are the GOAT. Like, it just is, because we don't know what happens. And again, that's kind of the fun, because we all have our personal biases. I like big guys in basketball. I like centers. I like power forwards. I like the guys who can do a little bit of everything, as opposed to like a 6-foot point guard. So my biases are going to be prevalent when I give my greatest players of all time. Same with quarterbacks. If you want to say, well, it's titles, well, it's easily Brady. If you want to go with passing stats, you could argue it could be Brady or Manning or Breeze, even though Breeze belongs nowhere in that discussion. If you want to talk about efficiency, it's Aaron Rodgers. He's the greatest. Nobody's ever been better than Aaron Rodgers or Steve Young. Like, again, we all have our own personal biases, but again, I just think it's a different question as to who's the better player and who's the player that you want on your team, because the better player to me is Aaron Rodgers by a few feet. The player I'd rather have on my team
is Joe Flacco.
That's a little bit closer.
It's Joe Flacco.
That's a little bit closer.
Joe Flacco. 10-5 in the playoffs, Joe Flacco.
I meant between Rodgers and Stafford, you dink.
I heard Joe Flacco.
You did not hear Joe Flacco.
I heard Joe Flacco.
You did not hear Joe Flacco.
I know what I heard. I heard Joe Flacco. But
I know we're running over here, but did you want to talk about the thing that we talked about, or are you good?
I'm good. We can save it for next show if we want to. But that's it, guys. Thank you all for tuning in. Please like, share, subscribe to our show, to all the great shows on ASAP. We have one in the morning, one in the afternoon. Eventually, we will be having a night show starting up here fairly soon that I'm going to be a part of. We have shows on YouTube. We have shows on Facebook. I know, right? They're going to have me co-host a show. That's going to be dangerous. It's going to be real dangerous. But, we have all this great content.
Now.
Huh?
You're doing it now. What are you talking about?
I know.
You're cheating on us.
I know. I'm kind of a sloot that way. It happens. I know what I am. But we do.
You're an overseas 10. That's what you are. You're an overseas 10.
Exactly. I'm a 12, baby. I'm a 12. Sorry, 11. 11's my favorite number. I'm an 11. 11. You got to give me one extra one. Exactly. 1 and 1. But again, we have great analysts. We have great writers all on the show. We're continuously growing. We're going to get better. We're going to get bigger. So please like, share, and subscribe. Check out Joe's podcast, Out of Bounds with a Z, on his podcast. He always gives exactly Zorro, if anybody's old enough to even know what that is. Exactly. I had to say it because some people probably don't even know who Zorro is.
Probably not. I didn't even think of that.
I know who Zorro is because I went as Zorro for Halloween one year. I even had a little pencil mustache and everything.
Right now, Nate's on Google. Who's Zorro? That's Zorro? Is that a Pokemon?
like they modeled Puss in Boots after Zorro with a little P. It's Z.
It's that. Yeah.
But yeah, thank everybody for watching. Again, check us out, and Joe and I, and hopefully Amon, if he stops cheating on us for 5 seconds, we'll be back next week. I really hope Amon watches us so he knows that he cheated on us. But everybody have a good night, and we will see y'all next week.
All sports, all plays. Yeah. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making up plays. We talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces.